KoitCast.
Today's guest is the Chief Technology Officer for NUFORC, the National UFO Reporting Centre. He has served as developer for NUFORC's website since 1995 and has had a lifelong interest in UFOs. Please give a huge Koit welcome to Christian Stepien. Hi Christian, and welcome to KoitCast.
Hi Koit, nice to meet you.
You too, my friend. Thank you for coming, it's much appreciated. Let's start with, in your own words, who are you, where'd you come from, etc.
My name's Christian Stepien. I'm the CTO at the National UFO Reporting Centre. I've been working with Peter Davenport who's the director since about probably 1994, when we took over the center from Bob Gribble, who founded it in 1974. So this is actually our 50th anniversary of existence. So big anniversary for us, big year. My background is basically in software development, computers. I founded a software company in 2002 called Experlogics, which did sales configuration, product configuration software, what's now called CPQ, and sold that in 2019. And since then, I've basically been devoting my full time to UFOs, which has been absolutely mind-blowing, as you can imagine.
Excellent. Let's jump into that a bit. You had a company, presumably you built it up quite massively and sold it for a nice hefty wedge. Is it like easy to do? I know that sounds silly as a question, but is it easy to do?
Is it easy to build a company?
Yeah.
No. It's a lot of hard work, that's for sure. But I had a great team. I had some great collaborators. A couple of good friends of mine were my partners, and we kind of called ourselves the dream team because I had a guy who was just, fantastic at sales, a guy who was fantastic at software development, a guy who was fantastic at services, which are kind of the three forks of what, a B2B software company needs. And, we built it up, we were a little unique in that we built it up organically. We never took funding. So we never had investors. I just put my own money into the company. And we slowly started selling software, and we're able to sell it, for a very nice
nice margin,
about 5 years ago. And so I mean, it's a different game today than when we started. When we started, it was the days of really Windows 3.1. PCs were just coming out. We were writing software for the PC. Now everything is web and software as a service. So as we built the company and it evolved, we moved from, PC software to running on servers to running on the cloud. And now it's a different game. It's security is super important. That wasn't such a highlight back when I started because not everybody in the world was trying to hack your systems. Now that's like critical. And I still think it's probably if you have an idea and you want to go out and make something for yourself in the world, there's really no better way than starting your own company, whether it's in software or something else. That's the way to really feel like you have a stake in it, ownership, pride of ownership, and really have a nice reward at the end. So.
Well, that's the thing, because if you're not beholden to your investors, you can do what the hell you want, how you want it, and it's your baby. That's nice.
Yeah, because a lot of the other companies that we saw out there, they had to kowtow to their investors, and their investors always wanted a piece of the pie and were steering them in certain directions. And we could always do what we felt was right.
Yeah, that's exactly how I would do it if I was in a company, if I ran a company or started a business. Although technically I do my own stuff, so I am the owner of a self-employed business in a way. Well played. So what got you directly involved with NUFORC then? What was the in?
Well, like I said, I moved to Seattle in, I think, 1993, something like that. I started going to the local MUFON groups, and that's where the National UFO Reporting Centre was founded, was in Seattle. So that's where I met Peter Davenport, Marilyn Child, some of the other, UFO names in the state of Washington. And when Bob Gribble decided to retire, he'd had enough after basically 20 years of basically taking calls over the telephone and also, getting reports through the mail, things like that. There was no internet back then, so people couldn't submit reports online or anything. Um, when Peter took over, I basically pulled him aside and said, look, this is the time to basically, the web was just coming out. Let's build a website. Let's get this information out there so the public knows what's going on. And let's put this in a database. Let's get organized and get this all computerized. So that's how I got started. My interest in UFOs goes back way before that. So I've been interested in the subject my entire life, reading about it, basically devouring any documentary I could ever find when I was, in my 20s and early 30s. And this was just something that is, it's like being in the right place at the right time to be able to, join this organization and make a real impact on what's going on in the field.
I'm always interested, right, in people's motivations and what sparked their interest in a certain field, right? So for me, it was when I was at school, there was like books in the library on UFOs and things. Is that the same for you, or was it something different?
Yeah, I think I remember magazines, books, articles, things like that. There wasn't, like I said, there was no internet. You couldn't go research something on the web, but I knew about it. We'd heard about Project Blue Book. We've heard about government cover-ups. That stuff was out there. So for some reason, that just struck me as a subject that was like, how can this not be, one of the most important things that mankind is looking into? And, if you look at the history of how the government has treated this subject, they've basically tried to tell us for 75 years that there's nothing going on, right? Now that's changing now since 2017, when the big New York Times article came out from Leslie Kean. But, to me, there was a ring of, hey, there's truth to this. There's something going on. And again, if we're truly being visited by, extraterrestrials, non-human intelligence, whatever you call them, how can that not be the most important thing that mankind is looking into? It's
I
a
agree.
monumental,
Yeah.
thing. We still have, most of our scientists to this day are debating, are we the only intelligent species in the universe? When there's clear evidence, and anybody who takes the time to look into it will find it, that we are not. And not only are we not, the other ones are here, flying around and doing strange things in people's bedrooms at night. And you go down this rabbit hole, the
Yeah.
UFO phenomenon, and it just gets stranger and stranger. So
Very, very strange.
yeah.
So when NUFORC was started, did it have a stated aim?
Yeah, it's a great story how it was started. Its aim was, Project Blue Book had wrapped up. This was 1974, and Bob Gribble was a retired firefighter in Seattle. And he, like me, he thought, why aren't we doing something about this? This is fascinating. So he literally printed these rolls of red stickers that said National UFO Reporting Center. They were about this big, right? And he mailed them off to all the law enforcement agencies, sheriff's departments, police departments, FAA, airports, anywhere he could think of, and said, hey, we're the National UFO Reporting Center. If you ever see anything, this is the number to call. And it had our hotline number, which we still have to this day, 206-722-3000. And sure enough, people were seeing things, and they did call. And we have a section on our website where you can go listen to some of the calls from back in that day, and
Cool.
they're incredible, to hear what people were seeing. I've actually, manned the hotline myself for short periods of time, and it's fascinating. People in general who see these things are floored by them, and they're life-changing sometimes. And they describe things, the types of things you've heard about: flying saucers, giant triangles, orbs, metallic spheres. They're all out there. And if anything, I think over the last year or so, things are basically ramping up. There's more sightings than there ever have been before. So it's
a busy time then for you.
it's a busy time. Yeah, we have a lot. It's a lot of work and a lot to keep up with here. So
I bet it is. From all the reports collected, are there patterns in the data? And if so, what are they?
yeah, there are patterns. There are certain types of craft that we see over and over and over again. Um, and most recently, those have been what we what we call metallic spheres, because they're basically metallic balls.
Mm.
And this has actually been acknowledged by the Pentagon and the government that they've seen these things too, and they can't explain them. But what these are, basically silvery, shiny spheres from the size of maybe a basketball up to something much larger, maybe even the size of a car, that basically can do incredible maneuvers. They'll just float by and then they'll just zip off to the sky in, a split second. They're off to the horizon. There's lots of orb sightings. Orbs are kind of plasmy, glowing balls of light that people see, again, doing these incredible maneuvers. And these will sometimes actually approach people, sometimes actually move around their houses, go into their houses, go through walls, things like that. So those get reported a lot. We get a lot of reports of triangles, and it's almost like there's models of cars, right?
Hmm.
There's pickup trucks, there's hatchbacks, there's motorcycles, there's different craft. So another very commonly reported one is a triangle that can be anywhere from, say, 30 feet on an edge to hundreds of feet, or maybe even a few hundred yards on an edge. Gigantic things. The Phoenix Lights is the classic example of that kind of a craft, where literally hundreds or thousands of people saw that over the skies of Phoenix back in 1997. And we're still getting reports of that to this day. I just had one come in a couple days ago where a witness who was there that night said, I saw this thing and it looked different to me than what everybody else was seeing. But he saw the classic triangle, which if you go to our website and look at the gallery page, the pictures are all there. And you can see they literally look just like triangles with big, bright balls of light in each corner and sometimes a big red light in the center. And so those are seen. They can hover soundlessly over a house and just stay completely motionless. And then again, they can zip off to the horizon and before you can blink an eye. So things like that. And of course, flying saucers. We still get saucer reports, but they're getting rarer. Um, it's almost like the aliens have moved on to the new models or something like that. But we get a
Yeah, it
lot.
seems
We
like
get
it,
a lot
doesn't
of
it?
people sending us in stories from like the 50s, the 60s, 70s, where they'll say, I've held on to this for my entire life, but I'm getting old now and I've got to tell somebody. And they'll tell
Do
us a
you think
story
it is
about a
because
flying
people?
saucer in their backyard.
Do you think it is because people get to that point where they're aging out and they know they're going to pass away
Yeah.
relatively
Oh, yeah.
soon,
Yeah.
or is it
People
because
tell us
or
that.
is it because the culture has changed and it's more open to see it now? So they think, oh, sod it, I will
It's
put that out.
it's both, I think. I think we definitely get people who are, getting elderly and want to just tell us what happened sometimes when they were a child or a young adult. And then certainly with the culture getting more acceptance of the phenomenon, people are feeling more comfortable to come out and tell people because, 10 years ago, people they felt they would be laughed at. And oftentimes they were, even by their
Mm.
friends and their family, would think that's ridiculous. And a lot of people tell us that in their reports. They say, I haven't told this before because I didn't want to be, you know, ridiculed, for people to think I'm crazy. So that kind of uh, idea that, the scientific establishment, the government kind of promoted for all those years really sunk in to the population. And people thought if, your neighbor came up to you and said, hey, I just saw a flying saucer in my backyard, they would think he's crazy. He must be crazy because the government never, all these authority figures are telling us anybody who sees a flying saucer is crazy. But they are absolutely not crazy. They were brave, they saw something life-changing, and it was an actual, real physical experience for them. So,
Yeah, I agree on that. This whole topic of like shame, embarrassment, fear.
Yeah.
It's a sad veil that was put over us, wasn't it, to stop us
Yeah.
reporting and to get to the truth.
Yeah.
Do you have some sort of thought? I know this is probably getting a bit ahead of ourselves here because we're going into the theoretical territory. Would you have some sort of thoughts on why there would need to be this big veil put over the populace?
Well, I think I know why. There's a lot of theories on why it started because the big waves of sightings started in the 40s when we started exploding atomic bombs. And there's a theory, of course, it's unproven, that that attracted these aliens, whatever NHIs you want to call them, because we were obviously getting to be a pretty dangerous species. And, another of the messages that the aliens have is that they do tell people that we have to take care of this planet. So in that vein, they kind of seem, like they're having a positive message to tell people we should be more environmentally conscious, we shouldn't be blowing off nuclear weapons, we should be taking care of this planet because it's a precious place. But back in the 40s, when these things started showing up, we were deep in World War II had just ended. We were developing the nuclear bomb and in an arms race with the Soviet Union. And there was this culture of secrecy. We didn't, some people didn't know if this was something Russian or something back then. It was all new. So the lid was slammed tight on it. And there were kind of public facing projects, like it started out with Project Grudge, Project Sign, then Project Blue Book. You can go look these up, where the government had basically acknowledged programs that were going out to try and investigate these things, because again, people were seeing them, people were getting pictures of them, and the government had to do something. um, so but these projects, especially Blue Book, their prime objective was to explain away everything. So they basically would, if there was even the remotest chance there was a balloon in the area, or, the famous one is there was lights seen in Michigan that, J. Allen Hynek said was swamp gas, which he regretted to the end of his days that he said that.
Yes.
But, so that there was a culture of secrecy. And then I think what people think happened was this got so compartmentalized and so deep within the Department of Defense that this culture rose around it of keeping it secret, and that still exists to this day. Now, if you go out and there's a great book out by Lou Elizondo that kind of goes into the deep, what he thinks is going on deep in the government, because he was actually in an official government Department of Defense UFO task force called OSAP. And those guys were out trying to track down UFOs. But they also were aware that they were kind of like, again, this more public side of things. There was this deeper group somewhere within the deep basement of the Department of Defense, and the defense contractors like Lockheed Martin, McDonnell Douglas, that had really a lock over the big secrets. Like, did we get a crashed flying saucer? Do we have that stored away somewhere? Do we have, high quality gun camera footage of UFOs? And where are all the radar tracks of all these things? For many, many years, when these things were sighted over, they were sighted over nuclear missile sites, over military sites. People would swoop in after the sighting and take everything away. And it was never, all the radar tracks, any evidence. The witnesses were sworn to secrecy, threatened with all kinds of, with actual personal harm should they reveal these secrets. And to this day, again, people believe that there is still this group deep within the Department of Defense somewhere that has this under lock and key and doesn't want to let it out. And at the same time, there is this group primarily led by people like Lou Elizondo. Tim Galladay was a Navy admiral, and some of the Air Force pilots, and that are trying to basically tell everybody, look, it's real. The government's hiding this from you. The government needs to disclose this. So
Yeah, I
if
hope they do. I
yeah, I
seriously
hope
hope
so
they do,
too.
but I don't think we're going to get that. Not from them. Not directly. Do you?
Hmm. I don't know. I honestly don't know. It's getting tougher and tougher for them to just continue to deny things, especially when people see things all the time, still. So,
Mm.
um, there's a great group out there called the New Paradigm Institute that I would recommend anybody go check out and actually sign up and, led by a lawyer, Daniel Sheehan, a famous civil rights lawyer. And they're really working hard to kind of get this information out of the government, get protection for some of the people who want to come forward, who are under NDAs and under strict confidentiality agreements that they can't break. So
Yeah, it's an interesting time we live in now compared to
yeah,
when I grew up in the 70s, 80s. It was you were a kook if you liked this stuff, but now it's like more commonplace, more mainstream, if you will. And I hope it gets to the point very soon where everything is out in the open because it would just reset us in a way, and I'd love that.
yeah. Well, the truth is the truth. Reality is reality. Why it never seems to be a positive thing to hide the truth from
No, of
people.
course not. No, it's dumb. To you, from all the data in NUFORC, what do you think is the most compelling report you have? Not necessarily the best case, but it could be the same thing. But what is the
It's
best
hard to
report?
pick out one, but we always like to go back to the Phoenix Lights case. That night, and this was going on what 25 years ago, 27 years ago, I guess, 1997. The phones were going off the hook. Air Force pilots were calling in, and literally people all over the valley saw that craft. It was you know, described as anywhere from the size of a 747 to something even much larger than that. And it just was one of the most widely seen, most visible cases that we have. Now, we get cases all the time where people see the same sort of thing, but it's much fewer witnesses. So,
Hmm.
but that's kind of the gold standard of cases, the Phoenix Lights. If you go to our website, I think we kind of suffer from, what's there's a phrase I can't quite come up with, but it's an embarrassment of riches. That's the phrase I'm working for, where go to our website. Again, for anybody who's listening, you can go to ufocenter.com. That's an easy way to get there, or noforc.org. And just go to our data bank, and there's a list of highlighted reports. And those are the ones that I'd say about 5 to 10% of the reports that come in, we mark as, the kind of holy crap reports. The ones
Yeah,
like I'm
the good stuff.
describing to you where, a giant triangle is hovering over somebody's house, or some, flying saucer is shooting a beam at somebody, things that aren't just lights in the sky or more mundane possible misidentifications. And like I said, we have so many that keep coming in. We actually have a team of investigators now that's starting to dive into some of these and follow up with people on those.
Oh, cool.
And they're getting more and more details. But again, we find, in the past, people were concerned about, are these hoaxes, or people trying to pull the wool over somebody's eyes, or just having some fun. We don't see that. There are a very few that come in like that we can tell right away are somebody, being silly, but most of these people are really sincere. They've seen something incredible, and they just feel out of a sense of duty that they need to report it to somebody.
Well, good on them for doing so. And which
Yeah.
leads me to the next question, which is what percentage of people do you think actually report a sighting? If there's any way to tell.
It's a small percent, 5% maybe.
Hmm.
I mean, there's
Which
no way
just
to
goes
know the
to,
actual number, but
yeah.
if I like to tell people, just go around and ask your friends and family, have you ever seen a UFO? And almost invariably, you'll find somebody in your group of acquaintances who's seen something. So you take those kinds of numbers and multiply them out, that's millions,
Hmm.
millions and millions of people have seen things.
See, I
And
always wonder about that because the 5%, right? They're giving you some great data, some great cases, some good drawings, some good anecdotes, etc.
Mhm.
But if there's 95%, imagine the picture we could build up right quick if everyone
I know.
just did it.
Yeah. Yeah, and we're not the only UFO reporting agency around either. There's MUFON, there's other groups that take UFO reports. So, we're getting probably a very large slice of the pie, but even if you go to MUFON's reports, they're getting about as many as we do. So there's a lot of stuff being seen out there. There just is all the time, every day.
Yeah, and I agree with you. Is obviously with you, you've got data in NUFORC and MUFON have got data, and there's probably other platforms that have data. Is there any some sort of consensus to put it all together into one Uber database?
Not yet. We're still there is no concerted effort to do that. There has been some talk about that, and that might happen. We'd like to throw some AI at it and start,
Yeah, that'd be good.
patterns, let people ask kind of more natural language questions about that. Something we're working on our database. We're also looking at collecting some of the more historical reports and putting them into the system.
So watch this space then with that one.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
with regards to shapes, and again, it's a question you almost can't answer, but I'll ask it nonetheless. We alluded to triangles, saucers, etc. Are shapes important in the grand scheme of things, or is it a trivial sideshow?
Well, they're one of the primary pieces of data that we collect. I mean, that's the first question we ask. What shape was it? What did it look like? We have a list of 20 shapes that people can pick from. So yeah, it is important. I mean, again, things like a disc, a flying disc, that's not something that we as humans have produced, right? You
Yeah.
don't see us flying around perfectly round shaped objects. You don't see us flying around metal spheres with no apparent um, mode of propulsion, no aerodynamic surfaces, no jet engines, no nothing. They just move. Um, so you can tell by the shape. Now, triangles are a little different because we do have some triangular
Mm.
advanced aircraft. And some of these sightings of triangles may be misidentifications of those, the stealth bomber, things like that. But when it comes to a craft that's, again, you get past shape and you get into behavior, the things that they actually do, such as hover completely silently over your house or your car or whatever, or just off in the distance. That's not something we can do with a giant triangle that's the size of a football field, right? We don't have that technology. Something that can make an instantaneous right angle turn at Mach 5 or Mach 6, which would turn any human pilot into jello if he was inside that craft.
Mm.
That's not something we can do, but that's something that these craft have been seen doing. And it's actually there are radar traces of these things that people have seen and collected on these things. So, shape, behavior, you can tell when it's something that's not from us.
Yeah.
There are
No, and
things
I'm
that
with you,
definitely
by the way,
stand out.
for all
So,
the reasons you mentioned.
yeah.
Have you seen the? I presume you have the jellyfish UFO video.
Yeah. Yep.
What do you make of that?
I don't know what to make of that, honestly.
Very
Um,
weird.
it is weird. And here at the National UFO Reporting Center, we have not seen anything. We don't get reports of that. I have gotten some videos of strange things floating through the sky that look like, I mean, maybe they look like a jellyfish, but I think they're almost balls of bubbles or something. That one was interesting because of the way it moves so completely smoothly across, but it doesn't look like anything typical that we've seen. Jeremy Corbell, who was the one who revealed that video, has come out and said that they found somebody who basically was kind of the key to getting that, said that there is more to that footage than what we're seeing, where it actually does something else at the end, changes direction or something like that.
I think he said it goes out above water, goes in the water,
Yeah, that's right. That's
and
what
then
it
comes
is.
back out again. And so it's a
Yeah, yeah.
transmedium craft, but it's
Um, yeah, but
yeah.
that's an outlier for sure. Now there is a video from that was kind of like released in the same kind of genre, that you've probably seen on the news. News Nation has shown it a million times, where there is one of these metallic spheres flying over a base, I think somewhere in the Middle East, and nobody knows what that is. They can't explain that either.
I know.
So,
I love living in this time now, looking at these things. I just wish there were more of them so we could keep looking at them and get more and more and more and more.
yeah, and everybody has, a high-res camera in their pocket now, so hopefully, but interestingly enough, we get stories over and over and over again of people looking up at something extremely dramatic, trying to get their camera up to take a picture, and their camera doesn't work. So
Yes. Yeah.
that's something we unfortunately have to deal with as well.
Going back to like you look at the Phoenix lights, right? Obviously, our technology wasn't amazing back then in terms of recording
Yeah.
for the home user. Technically, it is now, and you could even get access to night vision recording material.
Yeah.
If only we had another Phoenix lights incident where people could use that new tech and say, "Look, bang, there it is."
Yeah. Yeah. If only.
If it is an if only, it really is. What do you make of the drone swarms? Is it
I was hoping you'd ask
government?
me about that.
I have to. Have you seen that picture of the blue orb over Manchester in England as well, over the airport?
I
It's
did.
hovering.
I did see that. I'm not sure what to make of that. And I think that came from an anonymous source, didn't it?
I think so. Yeah, I
That
haven't looked at the
one,
thing of it, but
I don't, I don't know. I don't want to say skeptical, but I need to see some more on that. The picture, there is a very clear picture where you can see a blue thing sitting in front of the plane. That's that's a tough one. I mean, today in this day and age, anybody can fake anything, right? It's obvious. Now
unfortunately,
the drones are fascinating. I've been this one's been blowing my mind because it's obviously huge here in the United States. In the UK back in November, you guys had them over some US air bases. I've got the notes here
oh,
over
good.
Lincoln.
I'm glad you did because I know a lot of the New Jersey ones.
Airport is in Milton Hall, Suffolk,
Oh,
Norfolk,
Fairford,
and
yeah.
Gloucester. So that I believe has died down in the UK, but now we're having this. It's crazy. It's over New Jersey primarily, but we at NUFORC are getting reports of them everywhere, literally from all over the country. And drones are drones. It's. I think the big mystery is, first of all, are they truly drones? There's theories that maybe they're not drones. Maybe the aliens are trying to disguise themselves as drones or something like that. But the fact that what people described as the size of vehicles, I mean, drones are swarming places like Langley Air Force Base here, um, some of the weapons depot storage facilities in New Jersey, uh, Bedminster Golf Course, where Trump hangs out. Um, it's mind-boggling that we can't seem to figure out what's going on. And it's this huge mystery, right? I mean, 20, 30, 40, 50 drones flying around and nobody seems to be able to track them. If they are drones, they certainly have a limited range. They shouldn't be impossible to follow
No,
back
get a
where
few
they're coming
helicopters in
from,
the air.
right?
You'll
It
find
seems
where
like
they're
it's so
coming from.
easy. Get in a helicopter and follow
Yeah.
the thing, but and it's not like there's any good explanations for it coming out of the government. There's a tremendous amount of frustration growing amongst the mayors of these communities in New Jersey, who are basically saying this is ridiculous. They're going out in their backyards and seeing it themselves. Um, so I don't know what's going to happen there, but it's definitely not slowing down. If anything, it's accelerating. And
Mm.
if it is truly a person or a organization of some sort that's behind this, it's got to be costing a tremendous amount of money to be flying this many drones around all the time, basically every night. For what purpose? It's
Well, if
it's
you,
it's very
let's be honest,
mysterious.
if they're flying over American military bases, to me, one of my thoughts here is it's going to be a foreign power like China or whatever taking
Could
advantage of the
be.
fact you've got your presidency handing over soon, and they think Trump will be more down on people than Biden will. He seems as, he comes across as a weaker president. So maybe they're taking advantage of that now.
Yeah, but if it was a true national security threat, you would think the government would be all over this, would be shooting these things down, disassembling them, following them, tracing them, or, electronically jamming them, something.
Yeah.
It's, and if we truly can't, that's extremely worrisome in itself, right? If we
Oh,
can't
God, yeah.
protect ourselves from car-sized drone swarms, I mean, what kind of a military do we have? So
Here's another
I
thought on it,
gotta
right?
think that something's going to break sometime soon. I hope so. I mean, the other thing that could happen is they could just stop flying around and it remains a mystery forever.
That's
I
it, and it
can't
goes away.
imagine that we can keep flying around forever and we'll never figure it out. That just seems impossible, but who knows?
Here's another scenario I'll put to you. I wonder if it is a marketing ploy on behalf of a film coming out in like a year or so, like a UFO film where they do these sort of things.
The problem is it's breaking the law. They are flying over restricted airspace. That is against the law.
Hmm.
Um, they are not, drones are supposed to send out transponder identification signals to say who they are. They're not. That's breaking the law. Um, Apparently, when these drones start, it's interesting because when they come over an area, the lights come on, right? The
Hmm.
green, red lights, white lights, and then when they leave, the lights will go off. So that's breaking the law too. You're not allowed to fly drones the size of cars around without any lights on them.
Mm.
So a film crew would have to be, that's massively illegal to do what's being done. So
Okay. So let's push that one aside and I'll hit you with one
rogue
final
film crew,
theory.
if it's a film crew.
They're in the shit if it's a film crew. Here's the final theory. Imagine, well, not imagine, let's just say that the governments know that is going to be a real UFO swarm around her at this time, and they're trying to hide it by lobbing up their drones. Just
Those
like,
are all theories, I
mm,
mean, theories are theories. I it's a theory.
it
It's
is a
like
theory, but I like it nonetheless. Um, is a weird one for you. Let's see if you can answer this one. What percentage of cases that you get to NUFORC do you think will probably truly end up being alien UFO? Are we talking minuscule?
no, no, it's not minuscule. It's somewhere 5-10%, I'd say, maybe even more than that, 20. I mean, these things again, that can do these maneuvers that defy basically the laws of physics as we know them. They're not something that humans made.
Good. I'm glad you said that because I like it to be a bigger percentage.
It's a bigger number, and yeah, it's crazy.
Cool. Other than the Phoenix Lights, is there any other cases that is a personal favourite to yours, even if it might not be one that's well known?
Um, Not a particular case. I've just seen so many, unfortunately. They tend to blend together after a while. But the ones that the kind of type of case that really strikes me are really the triangles seem to fascinate me the most. Because people look up at these things and they see actual machinery. They can see, some people have described it as like looking up at a circuit board, with these lights, and the maneuvers that they can do are just mind-boggling. So I would say it's more of a classification, a type of report than a particular report.
Okay, that's fair. I remember going through that. Well, not going through it personally. I was never in Belgium, but you had the Belgian waves,
Yeah,
didn't you, with
Belgium
the
had the big
triangle?
wave in the 80s. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It was big in the UK at that time. That one it was all over the newspapers. Let's look at the bigger picture of this. What all this data and theories actually lead to. So, what does all of the data from the reporting centre lead you to believe about the universe and our place in it?
We are not alone. That's number one. We are absolutely not alone. And the universe is a much stranger place than we think it is. And we don't understand it. We don't understand reality, even physics. We've gotten so far, but we don't, there's much more to it that we don't understand. simply because we can observe these phenomena that don't fit into how we believe the world is supposed to work. So, you know, there's definitely non-human intelligences that have taken an interest in humanity and planet Earth that are apparently piloting these phenomenally advanced vehicles around the planet that we can do absolutely nothing about. So it's frightening in a way, because you think if they had nefarious intentions against us, there's really nothing I think we could do about it. Um, but again, they seem to be leaving us to our own devices. And, you know, despite their messages of save the planet, you know, don't shoot off nukes, they're letting us destroy it. You know,
Mm.
it's so I don't know. You know, there's a lot of theories that at some point they're going to come and reveal themselves en masse. Um, if you delve deep into the alien abduction phenomenon, which is absolutely fascinating, where you get the abductees telling you what their experiences are on the craft, um, and basically kind of sometimes the aliens are telling them things, you know, explaining things to them. Of course, you never know if they're telling the truth, but they seem to be somehow preparing some of these people for something that may happen in the future, training them.
I was
Um,
going to ask you about that. This whole we're training you to become a pilot so that you can get crafts down to
yeah,
take people away at a certain date. That's weird to me, and I'll tell you why.
it
Because
sure is.
they've trained. Well, it's weird as a scenario to begin with, but let's posit this: they're bound to have trained some people who have since passed away. I bet
Yeah,
some people who've come out with these stories have passed away, so their
yeah,
training meant
absolutely.
nothing.
Right.
Does that
Yeah.
make sense then?
No.
No, it doesn't, does it?
Okay, it doesn't make any sense. But so much of the UFO phenomena doesn't make any sense. It really, you know, I mean, you talk about, you know, beings that can go through walls, you know, that can basically take the abductee up through their ceiling to a craft as if the ceiling wasn't even there. So what's going on? Is it something metaphysical? Are they from a different dimension, you know, versus a different planet? Nobody really knows. You know, how long have they been here? Have they always been here? What are they? But you know, the whole UFO thing quickly bumps into the whole paranormal phenomenon universe as you delve deeper and deeper into it. Jacques Vallée has done a tremendous amount of thinking about this and has wrote some great books on it. And you know, basically says, you know, there's not a clear dividing line between, you know, technological, biological, physical things and more what we would call paranormal, ghost, you know, whatever kinds of things. It's
Where do you
a
stand on
whole
that?
spectrum of experience that, you know, UFO abductees and witnesses see and experience.
Where do you stand on it? Do you put the paranormal as a whole thing, as one scenario, or is the UFO its own category? Then you've got ghosts, then you've got this, that.
Well, the UFO is its own category. I mean, you know, when you get into just talking about ships, you know, craft,
Mm-hmm.
basically the term unidentified flying object, or now it's unidentified anomalous phenomenon, UAP, that everybody likes to say, which is a much broader term. Obviously, that could actually encompass ghosts and things like that. But UFOs are that. They're things flying around that nobody can identify and knows what they are. So it's definitely its own class of study, but it definitely belongs in this wider universe of things that get extremely strange and paranormal. So,
Mm.
because the the classic flying saucer that people see is tied in with people who experience abductions, see flying saucers or triangles or things like that. So there's a connection there. They're taken on board these craft. They can describe the interiors of these things. And at the same time, they experience all these very strange paranormal things. You know, telepathy obviously is one very prevalent phenomenon of the whole UFO phenomenon, where when people talk to aliens, they're not talking like you and me, you know, broadcasting sound waves and vibrating the air to your eardrums. They're speaking mind to mind. And the aliens seem to be able to communicate with us just fine like that. And we can communicate back to them telepathically. So that's interesting, right?
I say so, yeah. Right.
There's so much literature out there. You know, if anybody wants to go out and delve into this, I strongly recommend the books by David Jacobs. He
Yeah.
was one. I met him once at a conference. He's a fantastic guy, and he worked with a lot of abductees and really just tried to document, you know, what's going on. What do these people experience? What's happening on the crafts? You know.
Well, David
And
Jacobs, I'm
yeah,
sure he was going down the, wasn't it Hubrid's route with him, where he said that he thinks it's a nefarious plan to take over via
yeah, oh,
creating
yeah.
a hybrid
Yeah,
race.
his last book, The Threat, was describing basically that, well, we didn't talk about the hybrid program, but you know, the you know, as you go down the alien abduction rabbit hole, you quickly bump into the phenomenon or the experiences that people are having of, you know, the aliens harvesting eggs and sperm and
Mm.
creating what are basically hybrids, you know, part alien, part human. Women having pregnancies that disappear after 3 months and then being taken up to a ship and told this is your child, you know, a year later. And so David Jacobs believed that these hybrids were to the point where they were actually being inserted into our society. And again, the reason, you know, was he surmised it might be getting us ready for some mass takeover, some mass transformation, something like that. But I don't know. I hope that's not the case.
Yeah, we don't want to be transplanted elsewhere and someone take
No,
our home, do we? It's not that.
no, no.
Since coming into this work, looking back, do you get more personal satisfaction over your involvement with NUFORC or from your previous work experiences?
Oh, I don't know if I can say which of those was more personally satisfying. They were both, you know, extremely, you know, brought me a lot of happiness and a lot of
No, cool.
fulfillment in what I do. I think, you know, at this phase of my life, I'd certainly rather be doing this than running a software company again, which could could have its share of stress. Not that this doesn't, but you know, this is a passion, certainly. And developing software was always a passion for me too, but this is really something that I think has you know, a more impact, a more important stamp on, you know, humanity. If I can in some small part help get to the bottom of this, then, you know, I feel like that's really worthwhile time spent. So
Yeah, and I agree with you on that, definitely. Our final question here before we move into the Koit zone. So, when do you think the biggest questions about aliens and UFOs will get answered? Timeline wise, when do you
when
hope we'll see it? Yeah.
that's impossible for me to answer. I don't know. I think we're answering more questions all the time. I do think that a lot of the questions will be answered from some of the people who are doing more of the abduction research because they're the ones that are basically getting firsthand accounts of what some of these beings are up to. Um, there's some great work being done out there to try and, you know, civilian work to try and prove that these craft are out there. There's a group called the Galileo Project that's installing sky cams around the country with basically some pretty advanced artificial intelligence software that can identify planes, drones, you know, hoping to pick up something that can actually be physical proof. Um, Peter, who again was director of the center, proposed the idea for what's called passive radar, which is typical radar systems have a transmitter that sends a signal out that bounces off an object and comes back, and
Hmm.
it's not track it. Passive radar is basically taking the signals that are coming from things like TV transmitters, FM radio transmitters that are everywhere, which also bounce off objects. And you can basically create a receiver that will track things based on these other, you don't have to have a transmitter, in other words. So there's a guy named Mitch Randall who runs a company called Ascendant AI that's taken Peter's ideas and actually built a prototype of this. And one of the things that we're all hoping is that some funding can come in to get some of these units produced. The idea being that you could take, say, 4 or 5 of these, put them in a metropolitan area, and basically capture anything doing these strange maneuvers, right? And provide physical proof that it happened. So that's an interesting project. Things like that. Now, I'm sure there are others that are going on that I don't even know about. So,
So if there's any big, rich chap watching this that wants to get involved, contact NUFORC. Let's get that project off the ground.
We know where to send the money, that's for sure.
Exactly. Christian, for now, we are going to enter the Koit zone. Koit zone! So,
Okay.
random questions, not necessarily UFO related, so answer best you can. What food item calls to you to eat more of it?
What food item calls to me? Well, I do. Can it be a drink?
You can, yeah.
Coffee definitely calls to me. I drink a lot of coffee. That's a tough one. I'm not a super food driven guy. I enjoy all kinds of foods, but I do enjoy a good, well cooked piece of fish. That's
bang on. Have you ever lost a tooth apart from your milk teeth?
No. Wisdom
well
teeth.
Played.
No, never had a cavity.
Really? That is amazing. Yeah, good on you. Are you musical in any way?
Yes. I was actually played the saxophone and composed music. In my 20s and 30s, I was really active. Had a band in Cleveland, Ohio. We did original jazz fusion compositions, performed in clubs around the area, and I also played in wedding bands and things like that. So,
oh, lush. How many times were you forced to play Baker Street by Jerry Rafferty?
0.
Really? Whoa.
Hava Nagila, that's a different story.
What's the most filthy you've ever been? Right? And you can answer that however you wish. But my mind was going to mud and stuff. But
most filthy.
Yeah.
Boy, that's a tough one. I mean, I've been on some pretty diehard camping trips where we've gotten pretty darn filthy. But I don't recall a particular incident that would stand out. Sorry.
No, that's okay. It's a random question. This is what happens in the Koit zone. Next one. What scares you?
Boy, what scares me? That's a tricky one too. Obviously, when I go down a rabbit hole of thinking, the aliens might have some nefarious intentions and go down some of the things that we were discussing, that's a little frightening. Getting older and having health issues is always a scary thing, things like that. So,
a quick aside here then, on the alien-y thing, have you ever had any personal experiences yourself?
No, I haven't, unfortunately.
That's an unfortunate, even though you think it will scare you.
Yeah.
Whoa.
But I know a lot of people who have. I definitely have talked to plenty of firsthand people, and some people really close that had pretty dramatic experiences.
Yeah, it would scare the hell out of me, so I'm with you on that one. Conversely, what excites you?
Well, what I mean, I get excited by, when a new UFO report comes in, it's like, holy crap, that's incredible. That's always a little rush of adrenaline. I still, enjoy getting out mountain biking, hiking the outdoors, things like that, camping trips, raft trips, canoeing.
Oh, good stuff. No, I would like to do that stuff myself. What is your favorite film?
Well, when The Matrix came out, that was one really stuck with me. And that was my favorite film for a while. I think it may have fallen off the list. Um, these days, we don't watch too many movies. We're more into these, drama series on uh, Netflix and things like that. So, but
Yeah, Matrix is still a good
I
film.
love science fiction, obviously. Any good science fiction films are always welcome experiences. Obviously, we saw Dune. Dune was tremendous. Oppenheimer was probably the best movie we've seen in the last, few years. That was an incredible experience, which we got to see in IMAX, which was great.
See, the thing is with Oppenheimer, I found it annoyed me a bit. And I'll tell you, it's because the music was too loud in it. I always think
Oh,
Nolan's
really?
films too
That might have
badly
been.
mixed.
Yeah, well, we heard it in a really high-end IMAX theater, and it was just fantastic. But Oppenheimer, that's basically there are stories that when they set off that initial explosion, there was a UFO that came by. There are stories about that.
Hmm.
So that's kind of maybe when it all started. And Roswell was
Hmm.
shortly after that.
Yeah, it's a highly interesting thing to think about. Have you ever broken a bone?
No,
Whoa, you got good teeth, good bones.
no
You're
loss.
up to a winner.
This is an interesting series of questions you're throwing at me.
It's always random. I just write them as and when. Okay, here's the final one in this zone. You find an old coin, and upon rubbing it, you're transported to the country and time from where it originated and the date of its minting. So, where and when would you like that coin to be from?
Oh, jeez. Um, where and when? Where would I
Yeah,
like to go back in history?
correct.
Um, boy, honestly, I haven't thought about that too much because I think time travel is a little difficult to actually achieve. But if I had to go back somewhere, I guess I'd go back to Roswell.
There you go,
So
and you can get your answer.
I would like to be standing there on that farm that day to see what's actually falling out of the sky and know for myself, what really happened.
The thing is, you'd have to be camouflaged because you wouldn't want to get mixed up in it because the government
Well, the
would
thing
threaten
is,
you.
when it happened, there was nobody there.
Mm.
It was the farmer that came out the next day and found it. So if you were there at that moment to actually see it, then that would be something. We actually had a guy kind of sent in a report a few months ago. It's actually featured on our site in the blog somewhere, where he said he had talked to somebody who had been intimately involved in that recovery operation and said he was shown pictures where he saw the flying saucer and the craft and all these things.
God, we need to see all that
That's a guy
immediately.
hearing something from a guy, but
Yeah.
sincere, and he was one of these elderly people who just said, I need to tell somebody about this before it's too late.
Excellent stuff. Two final questions for you. Not in the Koit zone. We have now left that strange zone.
Oh, the
What
quick
else
one.
do you like to do in your downtime? Any activities or guilty pleasures? Now, I know you mentioned the outdoors. Is there anything else you're interested into?
Yeah, I like to play with my dog. I got a great dog. He's a rescue dog, a mutt. So just go out in the backyard and wrestle with him. That's enjoyable. We enjoy a good. We got a great home theater. I just got some fantastic speakers, kept speakers, which are made in the UK, actually assembled in the UK.
Good.
Kent Engineering Foundry, and they're super high end. So we've got this fantastic home theater where we can watch some of the great shows and movies that are out. I live in Santa Barbara, so we're close to the beach. We can go out the beach, enjoy mountain biking, that kind of stuff.
Lush. Lush.
Travel. I love to travel. We did a great trip out to Indonesia this past summer and went to a place called Wakatobi, which is probably the premier dive resort in the world. I got certified to scuba dive for the first time in my life,
Oh,
and
cool.
just had an incredible experience out there. So that travel is definitely up there.
It's high on your agenda. That leads
And
us to
going to
our
UFO
final.
conferences is also, that's another thing we love to do. Um, there are some if anybody's interested, I'm sure the UK has some, certainly here in the States, things like Contact in the Desert, the MUFON conferences, Soul Foundation. There's a lot of great gatherings where you can get together with other people who are really interested in the subject, and a lot of people who are what we call experiencers, who have had, who will tell you their stories about, firsthand about what's happened to them on the ships and things. So that's always, an amazing experience.
Yeah, I've never been to one, but I will at some stage, I imagine.
Oh, and before we go,
Hmm.
I have to tell your listeners, please, if you've seen something, if you've ever seen a UFO, it doesn't matter if it was yesterday or if it was 50 years ago, go to our website and file a report, because the more reports we get, the more of a case we can build and the more we can understand the phenomenon. And the website is, easiest way to get there is ufocenter.com, or you can just Google National UFO Reporting Center and preserve your story. Don't let it be lost. We want to hear from you.
Lush, and I completely agree, and that all that stuff will be linked in the description to this video. So again, like Christina said, if you've had an experience, you've never reported it, make sure you do. Other people are relying on you. Humanity is relying on you, so do it.
That's right. It's your duty.
It's definitely your duty. Christian, thank you ever so much for your time today. It's been much appreciated.
Yeah, Koit. Well, thank you very much. It's been a great conversation.
Quality. Goodbye, everyone. To watch other KoitCast episodes, please click the image top left. To subscribe to my channel, please click the image top right. Please like and share to help KoitCast grow, and most importantly of all, please click the notification bell so you never miss an upload.